FTN NFL Draft Preview Series rolls on, folks, as we continue to preview each and every one of the 32 NFL teams. I'm your host, Mike Randle. Follow me on Twitter at Randle Rant. And today we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. A lot of expectations with the Browns, changing parts. Deshaun Watson came in, but of course, this team on a mission here to sort of recreate the magic that they had in 2020. And when I want info on the Browns, I go to Chris Easterling of the Akron Beacon Journal. Follow him on Twitter at CEasterlingABJ. Does an amazing job out there. Going to give us some insight here, and we appreciate him dropping in for a few minutes here, the FTN NFL Draft Preview. Chris, always a pleasure to talk to you. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad, Mike. How you doing?
Doing all right. And listen, we want to talk about the Browns. You and I met in the preseason. A lot of questions. What was going to happen? The suspension, of course, was looming with Watson. But again, overall, I would say probably a little bit of a disappointing season for the Browns when you look back on 2022.
A little bit, but at the end of the day, everything was about Watson. And I think once Watson's suspension was extended to 11 games on a I guess appeals / settlement, I think inside the building, you would have gotten, if you gave some truth serum to some people, I think you would have gotten a look. Whatever happens. It's sort of a lost season. We just need to get Deshaun back on the field and get him somewhat back to playing NFL football. And that's really, I think, what that season boiled down to. I mean, it sucks for the fans and people who continue to wait for this team to put something together consistently, but at the same time, I mean, you're hoping that short-term pain of going through another losing season, pays off with, going forward with Watson returning to form a little bit.
And of course, Kevin Stefanski, fantastic job in 2020, NFL Coach of the Year. Now going into year 4, coaching changes. Talk to me about defensive coordinator and some changes that may be occurring now that the dominoes have started to fall with head coaches across the league.
Yeah, the day immediately after the season ended, they fired Joe Woods, defensive coordinator, and they actually were pretty expedient in getting his replacement. Jim Schwartz was the first guy that they interviewed. Jim obviously won a Super Bowl with Philly as a defensive coordinator, very respected defensive coordinator, veteran defensive coordinator. They bring him in like a week and a half later, and I think it's going to be good for them. I think, if this guy can't do it, I'm not sure anybody can do it for the Browns defense because, he again, very respected. He'll have the command of that room, or he should have the command of that room based on what he's done. And now it kind of puts on the impetus on the players, and specifically Myles Garrett, who is a kind of player who we've seen excel in a Jim Schwartz scheme. Now the defense, I would expect, and you're starting to see it, that the defensive staff starting to get, shuffled out. I think they were kind of waiting again till the Super Bowl and all the head coaching vacancies were filled to really go forward with that. And then, the one offensive assistant I think kind of keep your eye on is Drew Petzing, because he's connected to Jonathan Gannon. They coached together in Minnesota for several years. So there's been talk of him becoming his offensive coordinator in Arizona. He's tied a little bit with Shane, I'm going to butcher the last name in Indianapolis. Steichen, is that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, what a lucky break there. He's been sort of loosely tied there as well. So, that would be the one. He's the quarterback's coach for the Browns, but it was his first year as a quarterback's coach. So, that's maybe the one other domino that they're kind of waiting to see if it falls in terms of as this staff sort of comes back together for the 2023 season.
Now, when you look at the offense and potential free agents, players who could be gone next year, Amari Cooper came in, did a very nice job, had some big performances. Donovan Peoples-Jones also settled in, I think, nicely as the wide receiver too. So talk to me here about the offense. Of course, Nick Chubb, incredible, maybe the best pure running back in all of football. But with Watson, with an offseason coming into the year, they have some weapons here, Chris. Who's going to be going here on the offense?
Well, I mean, the biggest name probably is Kareem Hunt, because he's an unrestricted free agent. And, it just never completely clicked. I think part of that was injuries. part of that was, look, they have Nick Chubb, and having another back of Kareem Hunt's history of his talents is sort of a luxury in the NFL. So I expect him to go, but they have a guy behind him in Jerome Ford, a rookie this past year, who I think is going to fill in for him. Other than that, the offense, it's more who's coming than who's going to go, because they need to find another receiver, be it a free agent, be it up here. There's a lot of talk of trading for, a lot of people want to get into DeAndre Hopkins, conversation for obvious reasons, because the connections to Deshaun, but I'm not sure if that's possible. So, they're going to need another receiver. I think maybe another tight end, but really the pieces are there. It really comes down to who you got last offseason, and that's, you need you need Deshaun Watson to take a big step forward from what you saw the last 6 games of this past season into 2023.
Now we look on the other side of the ball. You talked about the pressure on the quarterback, which Cleveland can certainly do. But looking at them from DVOA, struggled against the rush, of course. 5th worst team in the NFL in terms of rush defense, pass defense. They're middle of the road. Any chance for free agents being added? Anything you're hearing on the defensive end of the football before we turn to the draft?
Well, I think that is where the big acquisitions, really, where a lot of work needs to be done, both in free agency and in the draft, because they need front 7 help in the worst way. Their defensive tackles were, as a group, probably the worst collection in the NFL. You lose Jadeveon Clowney because he's going to walk, and, he kind of greased it, he kind of set fire to things on his way out the door. The linebackers, when they weren't injured, they were, all right, but they need to upgrade that. So, obviously the Hargraves, the Paynes, the Tomlinsons, you're going to hear them. I'm sure those are going to be guys they're going to, try to go after on that side of the ball when free agency starts. I would think there is at least one big ticket defensive tackle or defensive free agent they bring in, front 7. And then Andrew Berry's, MO is, can I get a reclamation project? Can I get a little scratch and dent sale here? And I'm just curious. I'm curious who maybe that guy is that they sort of look at and go, okay, this guy maybe in a change of scenery, can really, develop. You saw Malik McDowell the one year he was in Cleveland actually produced. Then obviously the off the field troubles got with him, and Adrian Claiborne is another one they took they caught at the end of the career a couple of years ago. And he produced. I think that's kind of the get one big ticket guy and then try to fill in with some smaller deals, some scratch and dent sales, and obviously in the draft.
Yeah, and in the draft now, we look at their draft picks for this year. No first-round pick for the Browns. Second-round pick, which is number 43. They have a couple thirds, a couple fourths, fifths. Are you thinking, like you said, hard to get someone who's going to be an impact player necessarily without the first-round pick, but where do you think they'll go with those early picks here? It sounds like you're thinking defense.
Defense, and, I think receiver. I think the draft's maybe the better path to maybe get that thing that piece they needed at receiver, which is really kind of a speed guy, a true speed guy. They thought they had it in Anthony Schwartz, but Anthony Schwartz, the receiving part of the whole thing, he hasn't been able to live up to. But you look at a Josh Downs, a Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati, a Jaden Reed, Cedric Tillman, maybe, somebody like that, a receiver, you can get that second day. But I do think defensive tackle, especially, I think it looks like, and this is just an initial look at the class, I think it's a decent, intriguing defensive tackle, defensive line, class. So I think you can get some good value in day 2, and maybe even a little bit of get some sort of a project defensive tackle to kind of develop, early in day 3. But I think they absolutely have to come out of this draft with somebody who is a rotational piece in the front seven on defense.
Well, Chris, that's a situation with the Browns. Like we said, this is a big season for Cleveland. Watson, Njoku, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb back. A lot of great pieces together. If they can solidify that defense here, you're looking at an AFC North that they absolutely can make a run. They happen to be in the really tough division here in the AFC, but they have them. Appreciate the insight on the Browns here as we go into our think tank, try to project who the Browns are going to take care of the draft and get ready for April, of course. So thank you so much, folks. Chris Easterling joined us here for a few minutes. Follow him on Twitter at CEasterlingABJ at the Akron Beacon Journal. Does amazing work. Chris, thank you so much for a few minutes here. Would love to check back in with you as we get closer to the draft.
Absolutely. Be happy to.